This is The Radio Planet by Ralph Milne Farley, Chapter 6, The Vikings. Miles Cabot opened his weary eyes. Around him hung barbaric tapestries. He was lying on a couch covered by the same materials. Seated on the couch beside him was a creature, human in form, but covered with short golden brown fur. It seemed to be a young woman of some species, but of what species? Miles threw back his head and studied the creature's face, expecting to see the prognathous features of some anthropoid ape. But no, for eyes, nose, mouth, ears, and all were human, distinctly human and of high type. They might have been the features of an Earth girl, except for the fact that the short brown fur persisted on the face as the rest of the body. The general effect reminded Cabot, for all the world, of a teddy bear. Yes, that is what this creature was, an animated human teddy bear. Seeing Cabot look at her, the creature smiled down at him and murmured some strange words in a musical voice. Also, she stroked his cheek with one of her furry paws. At this moment, the hangings parted, and there stepped into their presence a man of the species, wearing a leather tunic and leather helmet, and carrying a wooden spear. Bowing low before the furry lady, he spoke to her in the same soft tongue which she had employed in addressing Miles. Not a single syllable was familiar to the Earthman, but he caught the words Roy and the King repeated a number of times, and also made out that the furry man had addressed the furry lady as Arkilu. Arkilu now arose from the couch, and taking by tablet and a stick of charcoal from a nearby stand, wrote some characters upon a sheet of paper and handed it to the man, who bowed and withdrew. The pad and charcoal gave Miles an idea. If he was to stay any length of time with these creatures, he had better start at once learning both their written and spoken languages. And perhaps, when he mastered it, he could persuade these kindly yet warlike folk to assist him against the Formians. He judged that they were kindly because of the actions of the furry lady, and they were warlike because of the habiliments of the furry man. Putting this idea into action, Miles sat up, gathering a gaudy blanket about his shoulders, and pointed to the writing materials. With a furry smile, Arkilu brought them to him. Having been through this game once before, he knew just where to begin. He pointed to the couch and handed her the pad and charcoal, whereupon the lady spoke some absolutely unintelligible sound, and then wrote upon the pad, in unmistakable Cupian shorthand, the familiar Cupian word for couch. Miles could hardly believe his senses. He stared at the paper, rubbed his eyes, and then stared again. How was it this creature employed a written character identical with the word used by another race far across the impassable boiling seas to designate the same thing? But perhaps this was merely a coincidence. So he pointed to another object. Again there came a strange sound, coupled with the familiar Cupian symbol. The experiment was repeated and repeated, always with the same result. Then Cabot himself took the writing materials and inscribed a number of words which seemed and sounded somewhat alike in Porovian antenna speech. To these words Arkilu gave an entirely different set of similar sounds. "Aha," said Cabot to himself, "this language employs exactly the same words as are used on our continent, but translates the symbols of these words into entirely different sounds." Cabot's interpretation of the situation proved correct in the main, which fact made it extremely easy for him to master this new language. Already he could carry on a written conversation with his benefactress, and before long it became possible, by dint of great care, for him to talk aloud in simple sentences. Of course, all this progress was not made at one sitting, for Arkilu insisted that her patient take frequent rests. From time to time, meals were served by female attendants, meals abounding in strange meats, mostly lobster-like, but some resembling fish and flesh. Each night Arkilu departed, leaving a furry man creature on guard, with leather armor and wooden spear. As he mastered the language, Miles learned the following facts from Arkilu. Her people were called the Vikings, and she was the eldest daughter of Theof, their ruler. The Vikings were a primitive race. Apparently, they knew nothing of any of the metals, but they had made considerable progress in the arts of tanning, weaving, and carpentry. The fact that they had made cloth accounted for the fact that they had paper. Their leather they had obtained from hides of the large variety of nocturnal reptiles known indiscriminately as newpers, and ranging in size from that of a cat to that of an elephant, though all possessed the common characteristics of small heads, long necks, stumpy legs, and long, heavy tails. She explained as follows to her guest how he had been rescued. Our home is in the city of Verkingi, far away, a little east of north from here. We Verkings stick pretty close to the cities, for the great open spaces of our land are inhabited by predatory tribes of wild creatures very like ourselves, called Roys. The leader of one of the largest tribes of these, At the Terrible, sought alliance with my father, and as price of this alliance, a union between At and myself, but I spurned him. His hordes then attacked Verkingi, but we repulsed them and drove them to the southward. At present we are on a punt of expedition into their territory. Our warriors are under the command of Judd the Excuse-maker and my father, Theof the Grim, and I have accompanied the headquarters, so as to witness the downfall of At the Terrible. It was undoubtedly one of the Roys who wounded you, but the approach of our men drove them off before they had time to do you further harm. It was I myself who found you lying beside the brook, and I would fain possess you as my own. You are unlike any man whom I have ever seen. Whence come you? I am from the planet Minos, O Akrilu the Beautiful, replied Cabot. But the princess incredulously shook her head, saying, I know not whereof you speak, nor know I the meaning of the word planet. There are no other worlds than this continent which we inhabit, surrounded by boiling seas on all sides. The rumor says strange beasts from somewhere have landed and are building a city to the eastward of the mountains. Rumor has it right, Miles laconically interjected, for I had just escaped from these beasts when I was wounded by the arrow of the Roys. Archelu opened her eyes in wonder. Tell me about them, she breathed. So the Earthman sat up, swathed in the gaudy tapestries of the Verkings, and related to the furry princess the story of his adventures on the planet Poros. It was difficult to pull it all into words within her comprehension, for neither she nor her people could know anything of radio, of the solar system, of airplanes or rifles. Accordingly, this account ran about as follows. Know, O princess, that there is another land called Minos, or in our own language, the Earth, far above the silver clouds, 1,000,000 times the distance from here to your capital city, Verkingi. Also, there is beyond your boiling seas another land much like this, where dwell hairless men called Cupians, and also the black beasts whom you have referred. These beasts are called Formians. Cupians and Formians cannot talk with their mouths, as you and I, nor do they have ears to hear with. Instead, they communicate by a kind of soundless magic called radio, but they write the same language as do you and the Verkings. On the Earth, I was a master of this magic radio, but one day my own magic proved too strong for me and shot me through the skies to Formia, where the Formians captured me. I found the Cupians were the slaves of the Formians. By means of radio, I was able to talk with both races. I escaped from the Formians by other magic, which could throw small black stones faster than arrows, and with deadly results. I led the Cupians to victory over their oppressors. Their princess, Lilla, became my bride, and our son Q now sits on the throne of Cupia. But Prince Uri, a renegade Cupian, rebelled against us, for he too loved Lilla. Miles continued. Uri and his allies possessed magic weapons that could fly through the air. What is fly? Archelu interrupted. If you mean swim, it is impossible, for no creatures ever lived that could swim in air. Ah, but this is magic, you must remember, he assured her. Have you, Verkings, never seen peculiar black objects sailing through the sky since the rumored arrival of the Formians on the continent? Archelu pursed her lips in thought. Yes, she admitted, there have been rumors of that too. Well, he continued, those were flying wagons of the Formians. When we finally defeated them and drove them across the boiling seas in their wagons, I revisited the planet Earth by means of the radio magic of which I've told you. But on my attempt to return to Cupia, I landed on your continent by mistake instead, and I was again captured by the Formian enemies. On my escape from them, my wounding by the Roy arrow, and now my rescue by you already know all this. Archelu smiled ingratiatingly. You are a pretty spinner of tales, therefore I shall keep you to amuse me. Methinks that even Theof the Grim will revel in your fantasies. and she leaned over and caressed Kabat's cheek with one furry hand. He cringed at the touch, yet strove not to offend her, whose continued friendship might mean so much toward his own return to his own country. He wanted her goodwill and influence, but out of loyalty to Lilla he dreaded her love. To change the subject, he inquired, "When shall I be well enough to get up?" "You are well enough now," she replied. "Try to stand." At Miles' insistence, a leather suit was sent for. He soon found himself dressed like a soldier of the Verkings, thus arrayed, and stood and walked about a little inside the tent. But Arkili would not permit him to venture outside until he should be stronger. Before leaving for the night, Arkili announced, "Tomorrow our expedition starts back for Verkingi, where, when we reach the city, I shall marry you, for I have decided that I love you."